Steve's passion for sharing the hard-learned lesson of family business stewardship results in transparent and candid feedback peppered with humility and humor. Having developed a robust process for benchmarking world-class companies, the Gun Company has benefited from the generosity of those willing to share their experiential wisdom. Seeking to pay it forward, Steve contributes his experience in business model development, strategic planning, market growth models, continuous improvement systems, cultural development, and financial performance improvement. So please help me with a round of applause to welcome Steve.
Wonderful. What a great crew here today. Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate the time. I'm going to start off with a little challenge here today. I have sat in many of these types of events and been the beneficiary of the wisdom that others have shared with me. And I'm going to tell you right off the bat that I don't have an original idea in my head. Everything that you're going to see today came from somebody else who is smarter than me. But I was just lucky enough to be able to hear that message and take that message and implement it. Okay? So my challenge to you today is to think through some of what you hear today and figure out exactly what you can implement. And I hope that results in you taking care of your people at a higher level for a higher purpose, which is one of the lessons I learned from somebody else in a talk just like this. So let me start today with just an overview of what we're going to cover. Today, a fellow who used to work with us, Mark Talon, is here, and I appreciate you being here, Mark. Mark was part of the Gun Company before we had a cultural awakening, and today he's going to hear what's happened in the last 15 years since he's worked with us. So what we're going to talk about is how we came to become awakened and what that awakening meant for our culture and the performance of our business. So that's really what we're going to talk today about quite a bit. So a little background. Tom was really nice to provide a little bit of background on our history. But who is the Gun Company? Basically, we were a 70-year-old family business, right? We were spun out of Bussmann Manufacturing, which is still today the world's largest manufacturer of fuses. We were like a little Italian restaurant. We had, when I joined in '93, I was employee number 14, my brother was employee 12, and we were like an Italian restaurant. We had roughly 9 family members out of that 14, and there was a lot of screaming and yelling going on in the kitchen, okay? It was quite a challenge, and Jamie Wolf is here, and she could tell a few stories about our evolution, but I guarantee I wouldn't be standing here talking about the Gun Company if it wasn't for CMA and Dan Bean and Joe Hoffman helping us figure out family business challenges, okay? I could talk about that all day, but thankfully for CMA's help, we are here to tell the story that we are here to tell today. We are a 30% ESOP, so we're 30% employee-owned. The family owns roughly 60-65%, and then some key executives own the balance. What do we do? This really isn't important. I'll steal a line from Bob Chapman. Ultimately, our product is our people. But what we do for our customers is that we make components for electrical power systems equipment. So our components are used in every piece of electrical power systems equipment, from the power plant to substation transformers to switchgear, the little green boxes you see in subdivision, right down to the watt-hour meter on the side of your house. Okay, if you have a UPS next to your computer, our parts are inside there. So anytime you're moving more than 400 volts of electricity, you're likely using equipment that has our components in it. Let's talk about our history a little bit. As I said, we were a mom and pop operation, typical, very small business. As I mentioned, $2.5 million in sales, 14 employees. In the early phase when my brother and I joined the business in 1992, it was all about growth. So we had to go out and sell it. And in those days, if you sold it, you made it. I got the scars to prove that I'm not a machinist. Thank God I still have a right thumb, because I tried very hard to cut it off. So quickly I got away from the equipment. My brother Rich was much better at operations, and so we kind of divided and conquered. And I was very, very fortunate to have an unbelievable partner in my brother Rich. He is one of the most incredible people on the planet. The level of community service that he does and the way that he gives to others is just unbelievable. So all that you're going to hear today is certainly not, again, what came out of my head. It's what came out of a wonderful partnership that I've had with my brother and our other team members. So as we grew the business, we moved into a phase where if we were really going to grow our business, we had to professionalize and standardize the way we did business. We had to create a business model. We had to have an operating system, something that was repeatable, something that we could use to develop others. And so this was a very big change in the way that we thought about business, and I'll tell you about how we came to that conclusion. And then when we reached what we call phase 4, what we figured out is how do we apply that business model, but do it in a way that serves people and takes care of people. And so we'll talk a lot about that today as well. So we'll start with what we call our first awakening, when we discovered benchmarking. And this is, in many ways, what you all are doing here today. You are here today listening to our story, and hopefully you will take away lessons that you can apply in your own life, okay, in your own business. So our first lesson is what we learned from Watlow Electric. They were the first company that really taught us what it meant to be a family business that was run professionally, or like I like to say, a business that had family members in it, okay? And so we went over to Watlow, and Peter Deloge and Tom Lamatia were unbelievably generous to us. And you might say, well, how generous were they? They actually gave us one of their HR leaders when we needed an HR leader to come over and help us. Think about that for a second. How many companies say, oh, you need an HR person? We've got a good HR person for you. You want to hire him? Who does that? Who's ever heard of such a thing? So that's how much Watlow helped us, okay? Now what Watlow had also is a wonderful board of directors, and we happen, coincidentally, to share one member of our respective boards. So we put in a board which was absolutely instrumental in professionalizing our business. So the one thing I would say, if your company doesn't have an independent board, get one. It is the single most important thing we did to professionalize our business. They really helped us quite a bit. What they really did is they challenged us. They held us accountable. So we thought we were doing great pre-2015. If you look at the performance on the slide, there was no problems. There's no burning platform. If you read the book Scaling Up, they talk about, in one part of the book, that, companies that are struggling, likely have operating income between 0 and 5%. If you're doing between 5 and 10, you're doing pretty well. That's, about average. But if you're doing 10 to 15, you're doing really well, and you are world class if you're beyond 15%. Well, our board was challenging us. They were saying, hey, you're no good unless you're getting to 15%. You have to be at 15%. For years, all I heard, 15%, 15%, 15%. Okay, well, that was a great challenge to us. Okay, so the board wanted us to be growing faster. We thought 13% compounded was great. We thought annual average ESOP stock appreciation at 13% was great. They kept pushing us for more, which was great. We needed that professional challenge. And to get there, we had to professionalize and improve our business. So we took 2 routes. We figured out that before we could get to those kind of results, we had to get culture right. And getting culture right meant getting our people right, okay? And so we had to get people right, and then we had to be operationally excellent. And so we'll talk about what that meant for us, okay? Now, I'm going to jump to the end of the story so that you know there is an ending here. This is our performance today. We line up all of our activities based on what you see there as a cultural true north for us. Before 2015, when Mark was with us, at the top of that true north compass was take care of the customer. And Mark lived our culture of bending over backwards to take care of the customer. We did everything to take care of the customer. We turned our people into knots to take care of the customer, okay? Huge shift when we put take care of each other at the top of the true north, okay? And what we started to do is we took our guiding principles, the 3 legs of our stool, take care of each other, take care of the customer, take care of the business. Those are the 3 legs of our stool. And we had all of our metrics aligned under those 3 guiding principles. Okay? And so you can see these are the metrics that we use to guide our business, and we've indicated where we are relative to other companies. Okay? And a lot of these metrics are world-class, so we'll talk about that a little bit. But what's more important than the metrics themselves is how we got there. And if this cooperates, I will tell you how we got there. Yeah, there we go. We got there, first step, is we learned to benchmark. And at the time, Washington University had what they called the Operational Excellence Association, which I was really lucky to be a part of. Did I see Cyril here?
He was earlier.
He was here earlier. He was a member of that with me. It was really an awesome group at WashU. And WashU was trying to attract executive MBA candidates, but what they were doing is pulling in manufacturing companies from around St. Louis, and we'd have a quarterly speaker, and then between speaker meetings, we'd have benchmarking visits and tours of member companies, which was awesome. And so we went to all these different companies, we saw how they operated, we opened up our doors, we showed how we operated, and there's a lot of sharing going on, okay? Of course, I mentioned how important Watlow was for us. And then the third part of this journey towards operational excellence is we got really, really lucky that this fella here, Phil Williford, absolute American hero, Green Beret, Special Forces guy, he had worked for Medtronic in their Jacksonville, Florida facility, and they had won the Shingo Prize. And so he brought to us the Shingo model of operational excellence, which has a very foundational cultural aspect to it. So how many people have read The Toyota Way? About lean practices, great book, lots of tools. Guess what that book misses? In a big way, it misses culture first. And so what we learned from the Shingo model is culture first. So the Shingo model here, this is the Shingo model house on the left. And what Shingo really helped us understand is we had to have some guiding principles that we could use to align all of our activities and get cultural alignment. And we had to put in systems, processes, and practices that were consistently applied across the business. And then what was somewhat minimized is the tools. Tools were a big part of the Toyota Way book. Things like doing SMED and spaghetti diagrams and how to drive cost out of your production. But what Shingo really emphasized was culture. And we really grabbed onto that, and it really helped us. And so what we did is we built a number of systems from an operational excellence and continuous improvement perspective that were foundational for our business. Okay? The first one, which is for us really, really important, is Gemba walks. A Gemba walk is when you go out onto your shop floor as a leader and you connect with the folks doing the work every day to not only understand that the work that they're doing and how they're doing it, but you connect with them personally. How are you doing today? How are things going? What can I do to help you? Can we do anything better? What can I do to hear what you have to say and listen to your ideas? Really, really important. And the first part of Gemba includes, hey, are we doing things safely? Let's walk around and find anything that might possibly hurt you. So you want to demonstrate care? You start by making sure people are safe and you have a safe working environment. And you ask for their help in making that the case. So Gemba walks were very, very important to us. The next thing we did is we demonstrated listening. Anyone who's been on a factory floor and listened to an employee who had an idea, they come up to you, they share this idea. You're a busy person. You got a lot on your mind. You walk away. Did you forget what the person just said to you? What do you do to action what the person just said to you? What if you forget? What if he says this 3 times to you over the course of 2 months and you don't do anything? that person isn't going to keep sharing ideas. Okay? However, if you go do that Gemba walk, and if you listen, and if you have a system that demonstrates that you listened, holy cow, you're starting to capture hearts and minds. So we have what we call a visual management system. So there's Cyril, anytime we hear an idea, an improvement idea, a criticism, we write it on a card and we put it on the proper departmental board. And that card does not come down until the person who made the comment says the issue's been resolved. That's pretty powerful. We're demonstrating listening and we are taking action based on what we hear. If you want to capture engagement, listen to your people. They're doing the job every day. They know what needs to be done to improve. And if you empower them to action their own ideas, it's outrageously powerful. And so it's a great thing to say that you want to do, but if you don't have a system to allow it to happen, it will not happen. Okay? So you can go into any one of our 12 factories, you see the exact same boards, we do things exactly the same. That is now a cultural habit. Demonstrating, listening, and actioning ideas. Really, really powerful. Again, I didn't create any of this. This came from Phil Williford, reinforced by Watlow Electric. We took best practices from other companies. I can claim no credit whatsoever, other than having the fortitude to take a good idea and implement it at our place. Okay? So, next thing we do, you got all these ideas on a board. Right? Some of them are more complicated than others. Some of them are serious problems. What do you have to do? You have to teach people how to solve problems. What does a typical company do when we have a problem? We get a bunch of people in the room and we talk about it. It's an unstructured discussion without an agenda. And typically we're not very good at solving problems when there's no structure. Right? So what do? You create a structure. And so we use what's called a Kaizen event. It's just an improvement event. In our world, we use a structure developed based on a tool that we call an A3. And what you see here is an A3. This is what we call a 5-box A3. First thing you do is define the problem. The 4 to 6 people in the room have to agree on what the problem is. How do they come to agree? We have a big 3M post-it board on the wall. Each person in the room says what they think the problem is. The facilitator writes down what every person said. Until all 4 to 6 people agree to the same wording on that problem statement, they don't do anything else. So how many times do you sit in a room talking about the problem, but everyone's talking around the problem because they haven't agreed to what the actual problem is? Right? So you start with talking about what the problem is and getting agreement on that. Next, you get together and you determine all of the facts that help us understand the problem. Next, you start dreaming about what could be. How would we like this to be? What would characterize a future state that would witness this problem being solved? Right? Then how do we close current state with future state? That's your implementation plan. How do you make sure that you keep on track on implementing your implementation plan? You have a control plan. You're going to get together and you're going to review the action plan and make sure everyone's staying on time. So this is a structured problem-solving approach that's outrageously powerful. So on the shop floor, we use this tool. Now when we went to Watlow, there are a bunch of brilliant engineers. There's so much talent at Watlow, it's unbelievable. But we were a little company at the time and we didn't have that much talent. So they had this beautiful, sexy 9-box A3, the most beautiful thing you've ever seen from engineering and problem solving. We couldn't use that. We had to dumb it down, bad word. We need to simplify it so that everybody on the shop floor could participate. So we needed to be able to have folks who maybe didn't get through high school solve problems themselves. And so systematically we had to have a problem-solving tool that we could use throughout the whole company. And it's been outrageously powerful. What you see in this picture is the 3M whiteboards that are used to walk everyone through the DMAIC process of the A3. Really powerful. Every one of our plants has a Kaizen room just like this with all of the process steps for problem solving right on the wall. All right, so you teach them problem solving, right? Then you sit there and you say, we keep solving problems because we have processes that are either undocumented or inconsistently executed or with poor training. That's what you're going to find. Why do you have problems? Because you haven't established process standards and you haven't trained your people on how to execute per those process standards. So what do? We make a pillar out of what we call process standardization using value stream maps. So if you're not familiar with value stream maps, it's a really powerful tool. Basically, it's process mapping on steroids with data. You indicate where all the problems are. Once you have a good solid map, you can identify and quantify where the biggest problem areas are, and then you can focus your team on addressing those issues. So very, very powerful tool. We use process maps for every process in our business. We use process maps to allow us, once we define and map the process, we can then establish training for each of those process steps. So every single thing we do at the gun company, from sales to accounting to HR, everything has a process map. Every process has training. Every Friday at 10 o'clock, there's an hour and a half of training on some topic over Zoom for the entire company. Now, not everybody shows up. Of course, we'd stop all production. It's videoed, and there's maybe 50 to 150 people on that call every Friday, depending on what the topic is. So you just have this drumbeat of constant training and development of the team. And that is a great way to get engagement. All right, so the last pillar is what we call cultural leadership. So how are we going to develop leaders? One of the great things Phil Williford told us, Phil, ex-Special Forces, he told us, you guys are great managers, but you're terrible leaders. Mark could tell you what a terrible leader I was. Leaders listen. Leaders empower. Leaders engage and drive engagement. Okay? I don't know that I did any of those things well. But thank God Phil came in my life and gave me a big, swift kick in the behind and taught me quite a bit about leadership. And so we developed a lot of leadership practices based on what Phil told us, and we really did flip the script on servant leadership. So it went from bottom up instead of top down. One of the biggest things that we did in terms of developing leaders is we put in what's called an individual development plan. And what an individual development plan is it is a request to ask our people to think introspectively about their own life. And we ask them, where do they see themselves in 3 to 5 years? And as servant leaders, we're asking, how can we help you get there? And so then we put in a specific plan and we say, well, how are you doing with our cultural values? Evaluate your behaviors. How consistent are they with our cultural values? That's an introspective question, not a right or wrong answer. This is an individual being introspective, asking themselves that question. Okay? And then we say, okay, based on where you want to go in life and what you say you want to be doing in 3 to 5 years, we break down a developmental plan in terms of knowledge that needs to be obtained, skills that need to be learned, and behaviors that need to become habitual. Okay? So if we think about how we're going to help people get where they want to go in life, we think about it in terms of knowledge, skills, and behaviors. And then we lay out a map and a plan to help someone get where they want to go. Okay? At the bottom of this, you can't see it, but there's a journal section. Every conversation, the individual is writing down his reflections, and that person's leader is writing down their reflections. This happens at least once a year. It can happen as many times as 4 times a year. I prefer 4 times a year. That constant check-in, that constant feedback, that constant introspection is pretty powerful. Great coaching. Next thing we do in terms of leadership development is we make sure we have very clear career ladders. You can't have a conversation about where someone wants to go in life without showing them a map of what could be. Okay, so every function in the business has its own career ladder, and then we talk about, well, hey, you want to jump from customer service to sales to business development, you want to go from engineering to operations to quality. You can jump all over the organization wherever you want, but someone has to have that vision of what is possible. And so that's what we're trying to provide them with these career ladders. Next thing, we have 3 critically important training curriculums. One is based on Barry Waymiller, who we will talk about in a minute. Another great company. It had a huge impact on us, just like Watlow. Barry Waymiller shared so much about leadership, I can't even do it justice. But one of the things they did is they gave us their course called Listen Like a Leader. Unbelievable communications class. Really, really powerful. Again, I was a terrible leader. This course woke me up and taught me what it meant to truly be a leader. And they have this whole culture around truly human leadership that had a huge impact on us, which I'll share shortly. So that is a week-long course. We give it to, now we're over 220 of our leaders have been through that class. We teach it twice a year, 24 people in the class each time. Really, really powerful. Then we teach them Kaizen. We teach them problem solving, how to participate in a Kaizen event, how to facilitate a Kaizen event eventually, and then how to demonstrate leadership through problem solving over time. Each of those courses, participation and facilitation and leadership, those are 1 week long courses. Okay? Typically that's about 40 hours of prep time, about 30 hours of classroom time, and about 30 hours of homework for each of those courses. So pretty powerful courses. Last one we did, which we just finished up, is what we call leadership development. So again, this is 3 different classes for emerging, developing, and advancing leaders. Each of those courses is 1 week, and they have that same format of about 30 hours of classroom time, about 40 hours of pre-work, and about 30 hours of homework. So pretty powerful in terms of developing our team. That wasn't enough. We had to figure out how to truly lead people in a way that would help them become who they were meant to be. And this is what we learned from Bob Chapman. Great book. You ever get to hear him speak, highly, highly recommend it. Can't possibly tell you the impact he's had on me personally and our company. Okay, so why, in part, am I doing this today? Because Bob Chapman did this, and he woke me up, and I hope I can help others in the same way, paying it forward. So what we did is we read the book, we trained Connie Dooley and one of our other leaders at Barry Waymiller so they would become, quote unquote, a professor. They call it a professor over there at Barry Waymiller. We had 2 professors, and Connie did it. Now, Connie was an inside salesperson for us, and she was one of the best we had in the company. But she was asking for Fridays off to host and facilitate retreats at her local parish. And she got so good at it that neighboring congregations were asking her to do weekend retreat facilitation. Wonderful, wonderful person, can't say enough about her. She and I would have these wonderful talks about spirituality, and I would say, how could we possibly leverage your skill set to offer what you bring to these congregations to our company? So what if we gave that same kind of life guidance to the folks that work for us to help them become who they were meant to be? Now, Connie was the perfect person to do this. So she went and got trained, and she really taught us how to listen and care for others. And I love this expression, and I can't take any credit at all. Bob Chapman has this great concept that we've really adopted. It's called a parental level of care. And that's just like the perfect way to think about it. If you're looking at your folks and talking to your folks as if they're your own child. If you think about the way you raise your own kids, you're worried about their education, you're worried about the skills that they're developing, you're worried about the behaviors that they demonstrate. You're constantly coaching them. You're constantly talking to them in a visionary way about what could be. Isn't that what parenting is? You're also holding them accountable for their behaviors, but you're doing it in a compassionate way. And so this is what we learned from Barry Waymiller and Bob Chapman, the need to be incredibly intentional and articulate about building culture. We thought role modeling was good enough. It was nowhere near. It's 5% of the equation. There's so much more that goes into building a culture. And so these are some of the things that we did. Connie led our why and our purpose development effort. She led the effort to determine our cultural values, which is our how. She went and did listening sessions at every facility every year, listening to every employee. I mean, just unbelievable what Connie brought to our business, and really became quite powerful. I couldn't possibly be prouder that the purpose of our company is to recognize and serve others so that lives are transformed. You're like, what? That's got nothing to do with making widgets. Yeah, exactly. It really doesn't matter. We are in the business, as Bob Chapman would say, of building people. Our product is our people, right? And so this is outrageously powerful, and I'm so proud to say I had nothing to do with that wording. Okay, I can take no credit. Our folks did everything to come up with that. And so one of the things that Connie does is, based on, again, recommendations from Barry Waymiller, she does listening sessions, small group, 10 to 15 people at a time. We ask 3 questions, and I'm sure she asks many more, but always starts with 3. And when I do town halls, always 3 questions. Number 1, how are we doing? Second question, how are we doing taking care of you? And thirdly, what can we do better? Okay? And so she asks those questions, and at the end of that 45-minute to an hour listening session, she gives everyone what we call the Q12 that comes right out of the book, First Break All the Rules. It's a measure of engagement. And then we have another 5 questions that we ask that are gun company questions. One of them is a net promoter score, which is pretty common. But anyway, we use these questions. Gallup says that the top quartile of their respondents and their surveys they consider to be world class. That's a score of 75. This is from 2022. It's 78.5. We just crossed over 80 for the first time in 2024, which is awesome. Thank you. You will hear the statistic that 20% engagement is the average on Gallup surveys. So 20% engagement at companies is pretty frightful. So 80% is awesome. And that net promoter score is awesome. We got an 82 on net promoter. So I think that reflects that we got this figured out a little bit, not to say that we can't keep improving. One of the things we do, again, can't take any credit for this because I am not a natural celebration guy. Mark will tell you. You know, I'm a pretty straightforward, get things done kind of guy. And thank God we have people on our team that love to throw parties and love to celebrate things, because that's not my skill set. But all you got to do is empower people and say, yeah, you can do that. And those that do it naturally and do it well, they're going to step right up because they love it. So all you got to do is empower them. And it's unbelievably cool. We have facilities, and it's so awesome that I don't have to say anything about this. We have facilities that get together to do community service events, to go out into the community, clean up trash, or go to an old person's home and clean up their whole house. It's just so cool that they take it upon themselves to do this together. Those kind of things to me are so neat, because we're building a culture of serving others, and it just becomes natural, and it's what people do. It's the air we breathe. It's really neat. So one of the things that we talk about, that we learned well from Barry Waymiller, is accountability with compassion. Yes, we are a take care of each other culture, but that does not mean everything is kumbaya and we're just hugging it out all the time. We are, but there has to be accountability for high performance. And so we are a high performance organization. Those metrics, we're at 99% on-time delivery, 99% quality. That is performance for the customer. We are very demanding. Our average manufacturing lead time for our products is 14 days. 100% custom products, we have nothing standard sitting on the shelf. So we are outrageously custom and outrageously responsive for our customers. So we're walking a tightrope every day. The stress level on our team to perform at a high level is not insignificant. Mark used to run our generator business. We are making parts for repairing power generators. You're talking about $100,000 to $200,000 an hour of downtime. They're flying jets into the airport to pick up our parts because they got to get that generator generating electricity again. Pretty critical stuff, right? So we are not an organization without performance anxiety and stress, okay? But when we have to hold folks accountable for performance, we do it in a compassionate way. So there's a whole formula for how we go about that, and it's really, really powerful. But generally as a business, if you think about the way we run now, we make sure our why, our how, our what, and our where is outrageously clear. Everybody is aligned. They know exactly what we're doing and how we're trying to do it. We have our processes and practice very well documented, tons of training. We have a ton of behavioral expectations, clear communications, celebrating what is expected and done well, because that creates its own peer pressure. You celebrate what is going really, really well, everyone wants to be a part of the celebration. Pretty powerful peer pressure. And then you get very disciplined, habitual, consistent, disciplined behaviors when you have some accountability in the mix. One of the big things for us is we think in terms of serving the average manufacturing employee. So we're going to get a demographic that covers the reality of human existence. We operate in China, we operate in India, in Mexico, Canada, the US, okay? One of the things that we've found is these cultural principles apply across the board. The Indians, the Chinese thrive in this kind of culture and structure, as do the Mexicans and the Canadians. Ultimately, we're human beings, right? And while there may be cultural differences country to country, humans still have the same needs. Humans are still blessed with certain things in their lives, right? They come with certain blessings in terms of health, intellectual capacity, so forth and so on. They get various knowledge exposures through education, right? We have to deal with that whole spectrum of education that comes to us. A whole mix of different skills and behaviors. So the reality is, the way we think about things is, no matter where somebody is on this spectrum of blessings and experiences in their life, we have to take them and move them from where they are on that bell curve to where we'd like to see them, which is that 95th percentile outstanding performance. So by definition, everyone that we encounter is at the 50th percentile on average. So how do you take a group of folks that come to you that on average are at the 50th percentile in terms of performance and move them to the 95th? And that's the way we think about leadership. We are trying to overcome whatever circumstances someone has had in their life and take them to where the good Lord meant them to be. So if you think about it, how many folks have been blessed with two parents who love them? How many folks have had a teacher that believed in them? How many folks have had a coach that motivated them? With each one of those questions, the percentages go down, right? But what if we have that parental level of care. It's pretty powerful. When we ask people where they want to go in life, I can't tell you how many times we get a deer in the headlights look. Like, what are you talking about? Like I'm going to do something other than react to what is happening to me in my life? I'm going to actually have a plan? What are you talking about? We're talking about the average American or Mexican or Chinese or Indian manufacturing worker. You start asking them what they want in their life, you may be the first asking that question. Pretty powerful. So can we be that parent? Can we be that teacher? Can we be that coach? That's the challenge of leadership. It's an awesome responsibility, but it is the single most motivating thing in life, in my opinion. When you can transform somebody's life, when you can take someone who is working, and this is in the case of Debbie Foster, she's an amazing story. Just talked to her the other day, love her to death. She was a receptionist in a company that we acquired in a small town in Indiana. She was from a small town in New York. The previous owner, let's just say, did not respect her. And she came into our organization and just absolutely blossomed. She got her college degree with us. She really got interested in information systems and learned all of our most advanced ERP system software. She decided she wanted to go help us implement the system in China when we put in that factory in China. So here's small town Indiana gal, is going to move to China. She lives there for 2 years. I mean, life-changing. She gets back, she says, hey, I want to do that again. Can I go to Mexico? Sure, you can go to Mexico. Let's go, right? Then she comes back, moves to St. Louis. She learns Power BI, which is business intelligence software. This is a gal who was essentially a receptionist, and now she's working on the latest technology on business intelligence. It's like, holy cow, this is, talk about transformational. Now she's on our integration team, and she goes to any plant that we acquire, and she's the forefront of implementing our customer service and our visual ERP systems. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that brings meaning to life. And we have lots and lots of examples of these kinds of things. Super neat. Jim Ludwig started with another, I can't stop talking about this stuff because it's so cool. Jim ran a manual Bridgeport machine tool in one of our factories. He had a high school education, amazing guy. Ends up advancing through the ranks with us. He is now the plant manager of our plant in Indiana. He went from, let's just say that I am sure his compensation has increased a factor of 10 while he's worked for us. I mean, he is just an unbelievable guy. And what is also really, really cool is his ESOP account. The amount of money that he has in his retirement account from the success that he's had and the company's had is so powerful. We have our first ESOP millionaires now, which is just unbelievable. When we started the ESOP, if someone would have told me we're going to give away $75 million, I would have said, ooh, what? But that is what is in these people's accounts now. And it is just so powerful and so cool to be able to change people's lives because they can retire. The average machinist is spending every dime he's got. I hate to say it, well, it's most Americans. It should, broadly, we are living beyond our means, right? As a society, we're so flippin' materialistic, and we just spend, and we're not saving. But this is forced savings. I hate to sound parental, but they can't get at this money until they retire, which is awesome because we have people who can now retire. And with more money than they could ever have imagined, they would have accumulated, which is just, again, so powerful and such a big part of the meaning in business for us. So to wrap it up, we've had this amazing journey, and there's no way in God's green earth I would have figured this out without the help of companies like Watlow and Barry Waymiller and the lessons that we've learned from benchmarking others. And so for us, what has worked like a charm is having a people-first culture where we are just hyper-focused on serving others. That's been really powerful. And then using operational excellence tools to build this culture of continuous improvement where you shine the light on problems, you celebrate problems because now you have the opportunity to improve and fix them. And you empower people, you capture hearts and minds, and through that engagement, holy cow, it's unbelievable what people bring. And it's really cool to see what they become. So anyway, that's our story today. One of the last things I will say is, of course, a huge thank you to those who have helped us along the way. I am happy, and we are happy, to help other companies by paying this forward. So if there's anything that we can do to help you all along this journey, particularly around the take care of people side of the equation, it's really hard to get right, but it's something we're really passionate about because it's been so powerful for us. Anything we can do to help you all, love to help you out. And what that means to me is, because we've got all this stuff documented and we've got such great training materials, if there's anything you guys saw here today that you want help with, I'll just send you our information. You can read what we do. Of course, you have to make it your own. Don't do what we did. Take from the lesson what applies to your business and see if that can't help you guys move forward. Okay? That's the ball game. Questions? Fire away.
Plant integration.
Yeah.
When you walk in day one, and obviously you're trying to add value. Companies have problems that you walk into. You mentioned a poisonous previous owner. Walk me through how you do, just kind of briefly how you do that.
Yeah, we've learned a lot. We've done 12 acquisitions, and every time we get a little better. One of the things that Phil Williford brought to us is what we call an after-action review process, military practice. So after anything we do significantly, we do an after-action review and we learn from it. So what we learned from integrations is that we have to start with listening and a ton of communication. So everyone's just scared to death in an acquisition they're going to lose their job. So the first thing we do is we come in and we say, number one, you guys are all becoming owners. And then they fall out of their chairs, they get back up in their chair, and we say, no, really, we're making you owners. And then the second thing we say is, nobody is losing their job. We have never had a layoff. We do not lose people in acquisitions. And so you take kind of fear right off the table, and then we start listening. We start putting in the pillars of our continuous improvement system. We start doing Gemba walks. People get freaked out. I come up to talk to a machinist. They're like, oh my God, I'm talking to the CEO. They learn pretty quickly that you're just another human being there to help out. And so you start, through Gemba, building relationships, and then you start demonstrating listening. So we put up the visual management boards just as quickly as we can. You do Gemba walks to make connections and start listening, and then we just start putting in all of our systems. So we have an integration team. We have a very, I'm a manufacturing guy, and you probably figured out I'm pretty neurotic. So we have a process for everything, and we got tools for exactly how we go about integration. We got value stream maps for how we do integrate, blah, 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 blah. And you just get better with every iteration. Does that answer the question a little bit?
It does, but what happens when you encounter some of your first line or second line management that's not conducive to success? I mean, have you encountered that sort of situation?
If you mean what happens when we have someone who isn't culturally aligned within, say, the first 6 months, I'm not saying we don't coach out the bad apples.
Okay.
We absolutely, if you do not get in line with our cultural values, you will be coached out of the organization. That is an accountability issue. Accountability with compassion means having that direct and candid conversation. Hey, listen, These are pretty clear values that we have, and these are the behaviors. We've been over this. You seem to be missing the message, and that's okay, because we're not for everybody. But how can we help you find a better fit? And then we follow the no surprises, 90-day rule, all of those things to help people land on their feet. So we're doing it the right way.
First of all, thank you. This was terrific. Is that your father in the picture in the center?
It is.
Is he still living? Or is he?
He is.
So, if you're second generation, Dan Bean, of course, most companies, third generation, I'm sure he's very proud of where you've taken the company. What's your biggest challenge for your second generation going forward versus your old challenge when you and your brother, you almost cut your thumb off when you were...
Yeah, our fourth generation, my brother's son has now joined us. Just an incredibly awesome kid, and I couldn't be happier that he's joined us. Maybe someday one of my 4 kids will join us. But one of the things we do, we educate them and we tell them to go out in the world and make your mark. And then once you've seen the world, if you think this is a better option and you're qualified and we have an open position, then you can interview, and we'll see if you can convince the rest of the team you should have a job. So there is a bit of a obstacle course that we put them through, which is totally fine. Remember, I had, 9 family members when I was there, and we're down to, 3 of the originals and now the 4th. So we've had to coach out family members. And that's a difficult thing to do, but it's necessary. Because if you're going to have a professional business, you can't have a family member who isn't towing the line with cultural values and performance. So the biggest challenge going forward, I think, for us in terms of a family business is what we call leadership succession and that transition. So Rich and I, as of December of 2023, have stepped down from the operating company. So if we are going to develop people and we are going to ask them, where do you want to be in 3 to 5 years? Of course, our best leaders are going to say, I want your job. Okay? Now, why do I have to remain the president? Why do I have to stay in control? If I'm a decent leader, I've developed people around me who can do what I do. And so, leaders got to, check the ego and say, it's time to provide opportunity for others. And so I'm so proud that we've done that. And so Rich and I really have a board role now. And so we're working on M&A, and we're working on culture, and we're working on training, but we're not running the company anymore. And I'm pretty proud of that. Cyril.
First, thank you very much. As a customer of you guys, I know that you perform well, so thank you for the performance.
Thank you for the business back then.
And the on-time delivery. So that one chart you showed, that log working chart, that started with the why. How often do you go back to that why and who do you involve and go back and what you become more?
Yeah.
Understand the business why. How often do you go back to that why and make sure that you're still, everything that changes around the world, in the right place, in the right business, and
all the time. I mean,
official process to do that?
Well, yeah, we do strategic planning twice a year, and we go through our why, our how, our what, and our where as an executive team every year. And we adjust the mission occasionally. We'll adjust the vision. I mean, we do make adjustments. They're incremental, but it's reviewed every single year.
And that informs your acquisitions probably, too, right?
Oh, yeah. Our strategic planning and strategic deployment process, dare I say, is the best I've experienced. Because if I experienced something better, I would have adopted it by now. And believe me, I stole all of it, so it's not like I deserve credit.
Best practice.
Yes. Benchmarking, collaboration.
Not like with somebody's R&D, Robin duplicate.
Yes. In college, they punished you for it. In business, they reward you for it. So, good questions. Anything else? We on time?
Perfectly on time.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody. If there's anything I can do, a lot of you guys I gave business cards, but feel free to reach out, and I'd be happy to help your companies in any way I can.
Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Anytime, brother.
All right, one more round of applause. I've known Steve for a number of years, and he's always been giving, always ready to help, so you don't meet a whole lot of people like Steve, so the offer to help is there for sure. Okay, real quick, I'm going to do a rapid thing on our sponsors. Mike from La Pata, I think, just walked out. Dave from Parkside in the back, if you could raise your hand. Grant from Atomic Revenue. Jason from SWIP over here. Tom from Black Twig right back here. Jamie from CMA up front. Paul from Pulcinelli standing in the blue blazer. And Matt Scaron wasn't able to make it. So round of applause for those, please. They make these events happen. So the food you eat, the coffee you drink, the room you're in, everything, they make these events happen. So again, thank you, Steve. We're going to take a quick pick here. Our standing joke here is if you are an ex-convict or somebody that is running from the law, just duck your head, because this is awesome. Thank you. All right, then just to wrap up, there are feedback forms on your table. If you could take 1 second, please. The most important thing on there is, what do you want to hear from us? Actually, it's not on the feedback form. If you could write on the feedback form what you would like to hear. This group will be back together probably around March timeframe, the smaller group. Our next event is November 8th. That's going to be the larger format with all the members involved. But we'd love to hear what you would like to hear about in March, if you wouldn't mind writing that on the forms. And then if you could, please recycle and throw away your trash and turn in your name badges in the brown tote at the back. Thank you all for being here. Have a great weekend. Nice job, man.
That was fun.